you got to have players. And
you do.
Okay, the Sanheim contract, I'm on record as saying I don't think that ever made sense when Fletcher gave it out. But the fact of the matter is that he's under contract.
Yeah, nothing you can do.
You got to deal with it.
They tried to trade him, they couldn't.
He loves being here. He has a no trade clause now. He's not waiving it. He loves being in Philly. The coach doesn't even hate him anymore. So Sanheim ain't going anywhere.
No.
And I think Briere even knew last year that Sanheim really doesn't fit the timeline. But they're stuck with him. And sorry, that was the final gift of Chuck Fletcher. Tough shit. Couturier was another Fletcher thing, and I don't think the Couturier contract would be that bad if he didn't have back surgery.
No, that's a good contract if he is what he is before the pandemic.
The Tippett contract, I think, is the exact kind of bet the Flyers should be making, especially given the fact that it expires when I think he's 30. There's the concerns I have about the Konecny deal are not shared by the Tippett deal because of the age factor. Because the fact of the matter is that the contract will expire before I start really worrying about Tippett's age. Konecny is, I would have to say, more than anything else, it's a bet on him aging well. They love him. He loves being here, and they think he's going to age well. Hopefully they're right, but I don't love the idea. I feel like a lot of the consternation about the amount of long-term contracts they have on this team, it's in large part driven by the fact that, and again, specifically the online portion of the fan base, they don't like this team. So it's it's basically why are you locking all these players I don't particularly like?
There are crazy people who are just I don't like these players.
Yes.
However,
or they're sick of these players.
Sick of these players. Sure, they exist. However, it's not like any of these dudes have ever won shit. You're locking up a core of players that have never been to an Eastern Conference final.
Fair.
I know that some of that is out of their control, and listen, no matter how much
is out of their control.
Yes, and no matter how much Sean Couturier's contract now. Listen, if he doesn't get hurt, I think that's a really good contract. But I just. Where do they get the good players? Where are the guys? Danny Briere keeps talking about building a team that doesn't just make the playoffs, but competes for Stanley Cups. Great. That's what I want to hear. It's what we've been begging of this franchise for 2 decades now.
Mm-hmm.
How? I just don't see how.
I think there is absolutely... I don't think it's as difficult as you're letting on. And by difficult, look, all this is the way you get those players is being a good GM. We don't yet know how good of a GM Danny Briere is. I don't think that this Travis Konecny contract is going to be what stops them from trading for a really good player when he becomes available. What's going to stop them from trading for a really good player when he comes available is if it turns out that Danny Briere is incapable of negotiating well enough to hammer out a deal for a really good player that becomes available. But that would be a potential problem even if they didn't re-sign Travis Konecny.
Yeah, that just means he's bad at his job.
I don't think this is going to put them in. I don't think this is going to put them in cap hell now. And we're hoping that he's going to make these moves to get these kinds of players over the next 3 to 4 years. That's when the moves are supposed to be made. And that's going to be the time when I don't think Konecny's contract has very little chance of being bad when the Flyers are trying to make the moves for the high-end talent they're trying to get. When I'm worried it's going to be bad is at the back half of the deal. And let me put it this way. If the Flyers are still bad, then Danny Briere is going to be the general manager at that point anyway.
Again, I don't think this is a bad contract. I think it is fine. I think if he stays relatively healthy, especially for the beginning of this contract, he'll be getting paid pretty much what he's worth.
Pretty much what he's worth.
I don't think it's bad. I'm just it's the roster spots to me. I'm where do these guys play? Is you going to have a third line that's making, between Couturier and Konecny,
do you really think Konecny is going to be a third line player though? I've actually seen some of that in the chat where people are saying how can you re-sign it? How can you sign another right wing when you have Michkov and he's going to be paying $8.75 million for a second line right wing? I mean, he's going to bounce around the lineup, but he can play the left side. He's played the left side a lot, and in the end, I think we get a little too hung up on depth chart positioning. What matters more is ice time and usage. And if Konecny is ultimately getting 19, 20 minutes a night and producing, 40 goals, 80 points, it doesn't matter whether he's being used on the second line versus the first line. And I think he's going to get more than enough first line time anyway, because he can play the left side. Michkov can probably play the left side. Right now, I want him playing the right side because I want him as comfortable as possible as he gets used to a new league. But it would shock me if like he's incapable of playing the left side. He's a left shooting winger. He could do that. I'm sure he's done it before. So I wouldn't get too hung up on the idea of that there's too many right wings. Forrester showed last year he can play the left side. Tippett can play the left side. Konecny can play the left side. They're going to have right shooting left side wingers. Whether Konecny spends most of his time at first line left wing or second line right wing, or maybe first line right wing until Michkov proves he deserves to be first line right wing. I wouldn't get too hung up on that because what matters more, like it's bad if Konecny in year 3 of this deal is getting 16 minutes a night. That's bad.
Yes.
That would be very bad. I don't think that's going to happen. I think he is going to be getting the ice time commensurate with the amount of money and the cap it that he is making. Now, what he does with that ice time is going to be up to him. But I think he is going to... I don't think this is a case of like, well, why did you just give $8.75 million to a second liner? I don't think the Flyers view him as second liner. I don't think they're going to be using him like a second liner.
No, and like we've said many times, good teams have 2 first lines.
Yes.
Their third line is a second line.
Yes.
And then every coach loves a grind fourth line. But like that's how you win. Because I always say like third lines win cups. Because like if you're in the Final Four, you're in the conference final, I bet you both teams' first lines are real fucking good.
Yeah.
I bet you both teams' second lines match up pretty well. And then it's like, do you have that depth on the third line? I don't care. Like, Konecny is a top 6 forward. You want to play him at right wing, left wing. He is a top 6 forward in the NHL. Like I just said, he's 44th in points per game over the last 2 years. That is a top 6 forward.
Easily.
Like, very much.
It's a top line forward.
Yes. He's real good.
Yeah.
I just am like... I don't know. I'm just not down with this. I don't think it's bad. I just don't think it's good either. Like he's going to be.
It's not a contract. I would have traded Konecny. I would have, because my view would have been, I want to get assets that I am more convinced fit what I see as the Flyers' most likely timeline for contention than Konecny does. Now, the Flyers look at it as number one, they think he's going to age well because they know him. They see how hard he works. They do have more information. I also think that information can tend to lead you down the road of confirmation bias and being like, well, he's gonna be the outlier because we know him and he's so great. And maybe, but there's a reason why they're called outliers, because they don't happen usually. So that's number one. They think he's gonna age well. They also want to be competitive, and trading away Konecny would certainly make this team worse. They do have a belief that, we don't want to bottom out. Trading away Konecny would probably make it easier for them to finish with a top 5 pick this year. They've made it clear they don't want to do that. So if you're going to keep him this year, I guess you might as well re-sign him. So there's that too. Number 3, and this is the big one, like we're talking about this in the idea of like, well, the Konecny deal will make more sense if Danny Briere is a good general manager that makes good moves. Danny Briere is a general manager that's making these moves. He thinks he's a good general manager. He thinks he's going to be able to build a good team around Travis Konecny early in this contract because justifiably he believes he's good at his job. I think the signs are relatively solid so far that Briere is at least a good GM, at worst a passable one. But as an outsider, I have to look at it and say I don't know for sure.
Yeah,
and that there is a world where Danny Briere is actually a terrible general manager, and I have to view that as a possible outcome. Danny Briere is not operate. Danny Briere is not viewing that as a possible outcome.
No, that is a very good point in terms of like the way you look at it.
Yeah,
like well, he can't look at it that way.
He can't look at it like I might suck.
Yeah,
it's like no, Danny, I don't want you looking at it thinking like I might suck.
That's fair.
All city like the mayor.